Good evening. Thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Yenny Vialta. I am the Arts and Humanities intern for the City of Takoma Park. And just want to let you know that tonight's poetry reading is one of the many events that we host for We Are Takoma, along with many other events that we host. You can check it out with the brochure that we have outside of the table, or you can also see more of the events online at our city's page or our Facebook page. You can also visit the website, which is www.tacomaparkmd.gov/arts. And now I will hand it over to our new Takoma Park Poet Laureate, Kathleen O'Toole.
Thank you, and thanks for this beautiful program and most of the arrangements for this reading, as well as the selection of the poets, along with our Takoma Park Arts and Humanities Commission. I think there are a couple commissioners here tonight. You want to wave your hands? At least I saw one. No? I know. Oh, the selection committee. I'm sorry. Okay. A couple of the people who interviewed me for this position. I knew I saw them in the room. Thank you for coming, and I'm happy to have such a good crowd, September being as busy a month as it is for our the first of our third Thursday readings, and my first. For the next 2 years, I will generally be hosting these meetings. I want to give a shout out to my predecessor, Merrill Leffler, who's here, and who served in this role for 2 terms, is that correct? Well, maybe a little more than that. Okay. So I'm simply going to introduce the poets briefly, and then we'll have them come up and each read for about 15 minutes apiece. And I don't need to read what's in the program, but I'll just highlight a few things about each of the poets. And I am going to say that because I just like to disrupt things, we're going to go in the reverse alphabetical order, and therefore the reverse of what's in the program. And tonight we have a little bit of a treat, because in addition to the robust word that each of these wonderful women poets will bring, we've got some visuals and music tonight to accompany the poetry. So first you'll hear from Ann Quinn, whose honors include having won the Bethesda Literary Arts Festival Poetry Contest and been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. And Anne is also a graduate, has an MFA from Pacific Lutheran University. She and I both had chapbooks published by Finishing Line Press, which is a great press, and I think especially good in publishing women's poetic voices. And Ashira Malka, did I get that right, Ashira? Ashira Malka, who's actually the veteran here. This is her 3rd time reading in the Takoma Park Third Thursday reading. And Ashira came all the way down from Rockville and has some supporters with her tonight. And she, among other things, refers to herself as a nomad at heart and a paratrooper. You can read about that in the program. But I know that she has also a Takoma Park connection, because Ashira has participated in another of my poet laureate predecessor, Ann Becker's Writing the Village poetry workshop. And then Patricia Gray will read, and Patricia is a D.C. native, I think, and still lives in Washington, D.C., and formerly headed the Poetry and Literature Center at the Library of Congress. Her book, Rupture, I think it was not only published by Red Hen, but won an award from them, as I remember. And she's had artist fellowships, and I know she went to Bread Loaf once, because the one and only time I was there, that's when I first met Patricia. And so the only thing I'm going to ask you is to silence your cell phones and other noisemakers. And then without further ado, I'm going to ask Anne to begin our reading tonight. Thanks.
So wonderful to see everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I came down from Catonsville, by the way. I think that's farther than Rockville. My first poem is called The Glass of Wine. Vermeer, 1658 to 1660. Girls learned to sit very well, held by the frame of their bones in the frame of the bones of the dress. But the muscles tire, so she slumps onto the hard chair back. The table so warmly covered, the floor a checkerboard of cold tile. Every edge but the cushions sharply admonishes. Oh, for Bruegel's wedding dance, the men's excitement clearly rising from between their legs. The music a reedy cry of delight. Not the cold thread of wine down her throat. This man's intentions hidden beneath an elegant cloak, its ruffled cuff. He tries to impress with the jangle of his imperfect cittern, plucking that she smiles through, pretending not to be bored. This painting up on the slideshow right now is in the screen is by Ann Fisher, who lives in Bethesda, I believe. Her class at the Corcoran got together with writers from the Writers' Center in Bethesda to do an ekphrasis project, and we were paired. So this poem that I wrote was in response to her painting. And most of you probably know, but that is called ekphrasis, when one art form inspires another. So hence the slideshow. That'd be fun to actually see the paintings. Hades waiting. Through this cranny I watch while she is away, as a respite from my toil and to temper the loneliness. A small window, but her work is powerful. As she rouses the soil, I smell the infant awakening. Though my task is death, I know birth, its augur. Air softens, becomes her caress, world her newborn, her canvas. The color of sky deepens a bit each day. Blue slowly draining into the gray, the way pink blooms her cheeks when she is pleased. Tree branches haze yellow, then the pale greens darken and fill, like her anger. Is it her mother's resentment, holding time still in that ceaseless green? Only birds relieve the monotony, those small bits of animated color reminding me of her, never still, always searching, always singing. At last, insects begin to voice my longing in an endless, restless symphony. Tree fire kindles, burning away the green mask, revealing a beauty that heralds the dark sweetness of her homecoming. So according to Stanley Plumley, all poems should be ekphrastic because they should all conjure a picture in the mind of the reader. So I hope this next poem will do that for you. Homespun. In a coffee shop, baristas banter about dating really old, rich men as they carry trays of cupcakes and change the chalkboard menu. Carefully made up young women dressed like lumberjacks, stocking caps perched on crow-black dyed hair, flannel shirts loose over skin-tight jeans. I'm reminded of the porcelain factory in Limoges, where we were proudly shown decals made to mimic soft earthenware, applied to the strong, vitrified plates to evoke low fire, unpolished fragility. The next poem is written in the form of a haibun, which is a Japanese form consisting of a block of prose, often about something to do with travel or written while traveling, followed by haiku, which relates back to the prose. Early morning mind. I wake at 2 a.m., lying on a couch in my sister's apartment in Boulder. My 6-year-old daughter asleep on a mat beside me. Plagued by jet lag and early waking, but 2 a.m.? I try all my usual tricks, listening to rain on my iPod, reciting rhyming poetry in my mind's ear, feeling for my pulse in each finger, but my mind will not let go. Finally, I risk waking Rose by turning on a soft light to find the volume of Chinese poetry I bought at a used bookstore yesterday. In A Restless Night in Camp, Dofu advises, it is useless to worry, wakeful while the long night goes. The blunt words from this distant world at last begin to quiet my mind. My thoughts, as if in translation, simplify, sleep. So when I was 29 and had just finished my first graduate degree and was trying to figure out what to do with my degrees in clarinet performance, I worked briefly as a maid at the Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. I was a terrible maid, but I wrote a poem about it. Leaf season at the Red Lion Inn. The maids gather in a hidden hallway. They've driven from the old mill towns, now bedroom communities, for staging this clever fiction of a lost America. The guests, dressed by L.L. Bean, have checked out. It is leaf season, and they are off to the next stop, leaving rumpled beds, hairs in showers, and likely no tip. The girls, eternally girls at this job, in their candy striper jumpers and perma-press white blouses, endure a scolding about yesterday's lapses. One strand of hair blemishing the porcelain perfection of a toilet in 314, or a speck of tissue brightening a carpet in 403, incurs the wrath of the matron. Then they load their carts with dead white sheets, disinfected towels, little gift-wrap soaps, lion-crested razors, and matchbooks, and are off to set a new stage. Outside, the sky and the leaves are enough to make anyone believe in God, a cathedral of color and light. But here, the maids see only as far as the vacuum can reach. Meanwhile, the leaves are dropping, and when the maids finish and go home to their own unmade beds and stray hairs, cigarettes in hand, not really any the richer, it's just that much closer to winter. This poem is addressed to a friend from those years in the Berkshires who died of brain cancer a few years ago. And it's named for the painting, Open Window by Matisse, Couloir, 1905. Your imminent death on Facebook, your last hours too late to connect. Old friend, I'm too familiar with that darkened room, that stoking breath. Through Matisse's open window, 6 sailboats ready themselves for the pink sea. We stand inside, a slight breeze, the salt air. Let me remember you by your stories, your job long ago on a cruise ship, the women given scraps so they had to beg from the men's table and take lovers. Where will any of us go? Do you see the walls of this room? As if the artist's colors, when depleted, called for others, greens yielding to pinks. You disembarked on an island and called the Union. They wouldn't let you back on the ship, so you found a yacht bound for Europe. The cook had quit. When they discovered you knew just scrambled eggs and tuna salad, it was too late. A jumble of mishaps, a beauty. Our lives a series of corrections, design obscured. But there waiting, the open window. So on the way down here, I've been listening to a book called Bored and Brilliant, about how disengaging from media and electronics frees up space in our brain to be bored, and that's where creativity simmers and comes out. And I'm cognizant that it's ironic that I'm listening to this book while I'm driving. But it's a good book. I'm almost done. But this poem is from a drive I took in silence once. Connecticut Avenue. Early spring. Trees still leaded frames for sky color. Rush hour, so I wait, looking. From the car, I envy walkers on the sidewalks. The green bronze lions flanking the apartment doors watch with me. An older woman, wait, she's my age, stops, thinks, tries the great door. No, not this one. She continues her journey. I look past commuters who sit in the bus shelter, captive to their phones, at a young woman who stands deep in a book, cover uncurled, somber black. Aristophanes? Dickens? I watch her turn the last page, intent in her moment, as she in the book. Can I be like that again? Traffic tears me away. I leave her as she leaves her heroine. This life tugging us both back. That current relentless. And my last poem is from my chapbook, Final Deployment. It's called Ma, and the epigraph is, in Japan, Ma is the essential space of nothingness, the empty, the void. I've been thinking about the in-between places lately, like the space between words and the silence between notes. The summer between school years, the nights between days, and how essential the in-betweens are. And what I'm wondering is if death is the in-between space or if life is. Thank you.
Hello. I'm so glad to learn from Ann, right, that I'm brilliant because I'm always bored. I made a card, like a business card, you know, and it has my tombstone on it, my name, and it says bored to death. And I wanted to bring it, but I didn't feel like it was, you know, going to fit in tonight. But now I really wish I brought some of those. Anyway, I need some decoration. Because I like rainbows and, because my stuff is from the garden and colorful places like that. And I had a book that I forgot to bring up. Am I allowed to go get my book? Sweet Pea in the Garden. And actually, my name is Sweet Pea. My mommy, who's over there, named me. And I don't know if you can tell, but I am bright green. And this is my self-portrait. You see, I match the grass. And I guess I'll do something from this. Because, you know, that's my habit. So this is Buzzy. This is my friend Buzzy. And Buzzy is a bee, obviously. Buzzy's got a stinger that's a real humdinger, and if Buzzy ever stings, that'll be a real zinger. Buzzy's in the sky. Buzzy lives nearby. Buzzy wants to visit, but is feeling shy. Why? Buzzy's got a tummy ache from eating insecticide. That sure was a doozy. Buzzy's feeling woozy. Alert, alert, Buzzy is hurt. All it took was one insecticidic squirt. Could have been a farmer, could have been a gardener, could have been a who knows what or who partner. But regardless of the cause, Buzzy doesn't know the laws, and busy Buzzy never pauses, just keeps helping. And the loss is whose? Could it be me and you? Buzzy keeps so busy pollinating, making pretty in the country and the city. Buzzy doesn't see the difference between safe and dangerous fields. Buzzy just knows mostly how to feel. Buzzy! Thank you. And then my other friend who's pictured on the cover here is Tiny Tick, whose lips are kind of red. You can probably guess why Tiny Tick would have red lips. And this is Tiny Tick. And ticks don't usually get pictured like, you know, on doilies, you know, unfortunately, and they really deserve that, so I did that. I'm just a teeny tiny little tick, and it's my big job to make you very, very sick. I can give you Lyme disease, Eastern equine encephalitis, but I cannot give you diabetes mellitus. No, in order to get that, you'll have to go elsewhere. I know, life really isn't very fair. And yes, anybody who wants to look at that book later can. Now, those are like older, and this is newer, Date, which is the first one of the newer ones that I was going to read. They happened to pick, I don't know who had the great taste to pick that one of mine to put in the program, but you have it. So I will read from the program, and this is all about Date. When Date was the tiniest of little datelets, comfortably ensconced with her sisters up in the palm tree, sometimes a belly dancer or two would come to the oasis to dance in the dusty dusk, and Date would peer down from above, watching them. She'd tire and doze with eyes half closed, and in dreams find herself dancing with them. All the swaying was gloriously freeing. There was nothing else like it. Wow, what a feeling. When the day came for Date to finally wriggle, pop, and drop free of the tree, she found herself struggling in sand and bulky. She rolled over to the water, rinsed herself of sand, and found herself afloat, free again. Her few seconds on land were a bit much for Date, and although she finally learned to landlub and dance some, she was always a water lover after that. I did time myself reading these, but I still have no idea how long it's going to take, so I'll just read until somebody tells me that, you know, it's been long enough, I guess. Because I think it takes different, like time is different here than at home. And this is Hazelnut. Hazelnut had a teeny tiny butt, and a teeny tiny butt had Hazelnut. But when she got to the party of the seeds, getting in the front door was a squeeze. The seeds all said, "Hazelnut, don't come in. If you try, you're gonna bust a gut." Because Hazelnut's body was so hard, she couldn't squeeze any smaller, so she stayed in the yard. Then all of the seeds streamed out to play, and everybody had a most wonderful day. I am totally organized, yes. Okay, now this is about my mommy. This is me and my mommy. This is called Angel Pea. Before Sweet Pea was called Sweet Pea, she was a little angel pea, floating around alone in the universe. She was so alone, she didn't even know what it was like to feel anything different. She had no idea how to connect with anyone or anything, but there was a pull. There was a pull, and that pull pulled her. It was almost feelable. Somehow, sorry. If she could even feel, but even without feeling, somehow the pull pulled her. She was searching for something, searching without knowing she was searching, searching without even knowing what searching was. And then, somehow it happened. She found a mommy she wanted to be hers, a mommy she wanted for her very own mommy. So as soon as she spied her and felt that very special connection, she floated down and hung out by this new mommy's shoulder. Oh, it was so special to have a mommy. Angel P didn't know this was what she'd been floating in search of all along. It seemed like little Angel P's newly chosen mommy must know something was going on, because every once in a while she kept touching her shoulder, and sometimes she would look in that direction very briefly. In those moments, when her new mommy looked towards her, Angel P felt like nothing she'd ever felt before. Well, she started to feel for the first time, finally, actually. It was incredible. It was amazing. It was stupendous. Well, it just was. And she was. She could feel herself forming and becoming more solid, taking on the cutest of all possible sweet pea forms. Pretty soon, Sweet Pea arrived in the world, ensconced in the pod and surrounded by her sisters. The pod hung ever so gently off a pea plant stalk, and the sweet smell of flowers drifted all over all of them, soothing them to sleep and waking them up. They all lived with the rhythm of the flowers that emit their scent at specific times each. The blooms and the blossoms all caught the light just so, too, and filtered the sun to shelter the tiny pea pod babies. It was the safest place in all the world, and not only that, it was the only one. One day, when Sweet Pea got old enough to move around some more, she glinted and squinted in the light and looked down to see something orange and big. It was kind of hazy. What was it? It was huge. It had a very familiar feeling to her, and Sweet Pea felt strongly drawn to this seeming stranger. She was still in a dreamlike baby state, though, so it was a while before she would get strong and sure and brave enough to climb out of the pod and down the stalk into the garden, with her tiny little legs on tiny little feet beneath her. Sweet Pea very gingerly put down a toe, then a foot, then the other foot, and took a step for the very first time. She fell down and laughed. That was hard. She persevered, though, and kept going and going and going until she got it all right and walked right over to this huge seeming stranger. She didn't know why, but she just gave this big stranger a hug. That's when she found out this stranger was kind of hard, but it didn't matter. Sweet Pea absolutely loved her and spent her days curled about her when she wasn't with her sisters up in the pod, where she'd climb back up at night to go to sleep. It turned out this stranger was called Pumpkin. Now, a pumpkin is a very special variety of pumpkin that is loving and motherly. What Sweet Pea eventually found out was that this was the mother, the mommy, who had pulled her out of her Angel Pea existence into this more earthly form. Pumpkin was very protective of Sweet Pea and kept her away from all kinds of dangers. Of course, Pumpkin protected all the little peas, but she and Sweet Pea always retained an extra special bond, the bond of beyond. Sorry, that wasn't very funny. I'll read something funnier. Let's see. Of course, I brought copies, for anyone who wants, so I have lots in here. That's part of my thing. Stem to stern pea. Stem to stern Sweet Pea sits on the dock. She loves doing most anything that doesn't involve a clock. She and her sister Salty are about to build a boat. It's really fun thinking about making something that's going to float. Salty comes in with the tide. That was such a fun ride. She travels the world so wide, out on the deck with nothing to hide. There's always weather outside. To do work gives great pride. The cooking place inside is called a galley, with standing area skinny as an alley. Of her tiny crew, Salty, that's Sweet Pea, my sister, Salty. Of her tiny crew, Salty always takes a tally. With a boatload of peas, it's easier to rally. When Salty's at port, she picks up her mail. When she's out and about, communications curtailed. She sails by the stars and the sun and the moon, and over her many little peas do swoon. Here's a very short one. This is Mulberry. Mulberry's always thinking about it, whatever it may be. And that's the reason why mulberry is called mulberry. Thank you so much.
As our last poet comes up, I have two other people to introduce to you because Patricia and her poems are going to be accompanied by music and visuals. Pete Seligman, who is over here, Pete's art will be displayed during the reading. He works mostly in mixed media, assemblage and collage. Pete will also play guitar and sing a little. He has performed his songs in Folk City, in Greenwich Village, and in other venues, and is a DC neighbor. And John Natali has been playing drums and annoying everyone around him since he was 14 years old. He has a day job as a computer programmer, and like Patricia, who he'll be accompanying on the drums, is a native of DC. And I just want to say, when they finish, we will have a reception afterwards, but I'm going to open it up for 5 or 10 minutes to see if people have any questions they want to ask the poets or particular responses to the poems. Patricia?
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Tonight we'll hear some poems by Patricia about the moon and lunacy. But to kick it off, John and I are going to play a song that I wrote called Moonlight. Went back to the town where my early days still glow bright. Stood in the street where we played kickball into the night. House looked sorta the same, but so much had changed. And the mistiness now filled the air. Same yellow moon rose over the trees. You could still smell the cool ocean breeze. Everyone's gone, but their shadows remain. My buddies, some dead, some lost in time. There's the fence Mike and I sat on, watching the world. All is familiar, but everything's strange. Same moon rose over the baseball field, and you can almost hear that school bell ring. Here comes the train that carried my work, weary dad. to the shore. Nothing has changed, but nothing is the same. It's a long, strange trip going home. Silver moon rise from the sea, shine a long ago path back to me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Pete and John. It was lovely. I love that silver moon rising. Thank you for coming tonight. It's so great to see some old friends and some new friends. And thanks to Ann and Ashira for their poems. My first poem once had a 3-month life as a poster in the Arlington art buses. It's called Spell, as in cast one. And could we have the first image, please, number 1? Oh, great. I'm not sure I have, okay. Spell, moon smudge, lacy fragment through the trees. I sew you into my camisole, raspy light, ignite. Next poem. In these poems, there'll be some names of full moons, folk names. And there are a lot of cultures that name the full moon, so they aren't from one culture. I usually use them in the month that they belong to, and this first month is January, and the poem is called Moon Tongue. Cold moon, moon of the terrible, white ice glistening on snow. Jagged light rends the surface. A hungry howl enters our spines, touching the lunacy spot. Oh, wine dances glittering in hearthlight. Wind, be shut out. Let it sing cauldron simmer, wassail away cabin fever, parade our charades, fire poke and feed the grate, corn pop and giggle our feet, make toast to each other's moon tongue, speaking calumnies together, we'll summon the wolf moon tonight. Next one is the July moon. I was born in July. Born in a lightning storm, thunder cracking sky roof, spirit eye opening, delivery shaft, branch breaking, falling, street blocked. Buck moon hiding out in the reaches, young antlers pushing through, itchy, eager. I was born under day before hay moon, alfalfa cut, baled, stashed from storm. Born under a mead moon, medieval, old pubs peppering flat beer to sell it. Born a bumpkin in the district's midsummer mischief. A sliver of madness left in me, switch of lightning, and this deep clap of thunder moon. It turns out I was born in a lightning storm. And for years I thought I was born at St. Elizabeth's because I just didn't know what hospital it was. It turns out it was a hospital that's no longer here. So this next poem, sometimes grief can be like madness if it grabs you and won't let go, as Anne mentioned something to that effect in one of her poems, I think. Anyway, about a year ago, my best friend from college died.
It's been hard to get used to the world without him in it. Not long ago, I heard the old blues song, St. James Infirmary. And I used it to get access to the deep grief and pain I was feeling. I even cried writing this poem. It's called Blues for Charlie, and my friends Pete and John are going to help me with it.
I went down to the St. James Infirmary. I saw my baby there. She was laid out on a cold white table. So sweet, so cool, so fair. Let her go, let her go, God bless her. Wherever she may be, she may search this whole wide world over. She'll never find a sweet man like me.
I listened to St. James Infirmary. Couldn't get it out of my mind. Picked up a pencil and paper, tried to make sense with a rhyme. I went down to St. James Infirmary, saw Charlie, my soul twin, there. He was stretched out on a long slab table, so still, so cold, so bare. When I went home that evening and left him, I never felt so alone. Tried all that night to forget him. His voice is still on my phone. Oh, let him go, let him go. God bless him. Soon our candles will all wick out. Just a crazy young poet, I loved him. Considered marriage, but we never went out. Charlie asked me what it's like to have a baby. Tell me every last thing, don't lie. So I told him in long, vivid letters, every push, every pain, every cry. Oh, let him go, God love him. Wherever his spirit may roam, I'll never find another like Charlie. He held truth so deep in his bones. Now, Charlie, my Charlie, please tell me. Only you can let me know this right now. Don't spare me the details, just tell me. What does it feel like to die? In the moment our last breath escapes us and the body lets go, is it bliss? I wish you could wake up and tell me. Should I give in the end? Not resist? We're leaving. We're all leaving. They'll miss us. Carry us away on that day. Put Buddy Guy and Keith Richards on the hearse wagon. Let them play as we're rolling away. Yay! This next poem has the phrase about lime burning in it. And so I thought I'd tell you that lime burning was something practiced in the 1800s. There were kilns that burned limestone or oyster shells to isolate calcium oxide, or which was then called burnt lime, so that it could be used in making mortar or fertilizer. A man who worked in the kiln had to tend it for about 3 days straight. He had to sleep by the kiln and breathe its toxic fumes. This poem is indirectly about the poet John Clare. He was a nature poet, and Mary Oliver called him that sweet flute John Clare, which he sure was. John Clare married a woman named Patty Turner, who was probably illiterate. No one seems sure, but they might have had 9 children. Not all of them lived. We do know that they had 6 living children by the time John Clare had gone mad and was in an insane asylum. At the time this poem takes place, he'd been in the insane asylum about 4 years. He left one early morning and walked 90 miles to the village where Patty and his children lived. He kept a journal, and from that and other sources, I found some of the information for this persona poem. It's in Patty Clare's voice. Patty Clare, after encountering John, late of the asylum in 1841. I cried out as if struck when we spied him stumbling by the road, and I bade them pull the horses up. My whole self hurt to see him so. Foot-foundered he with flapping sole, pebbles, twig ends, and such impinging, as he limped to cart, and did not know our neighbors, so turned away. But soon they swayed him, John, your wife has come for you. Get in. His hands were shaking when they clasped mine, softer hands without field work for several years. When friends left us at our cottage, I gave him broth. He'd not eat for days. Said he chewed tobacco, swallowed several quid, and was never hungry afterward. I gave him toddy, too, kept for children's ague, or for any wounded animal's warmth. John said he left the woadhouse 4 days gone, and walked with little rest just to touch my skin again. Slept in ditch and field. He's aged so much, I cry. He takes me to himself. To break the stench of him, we set a half-barrel tub in dog day sun. He stands naked in elm shade to bathe. Oh, John, the children away at morning tasks. We have so little time. When first we courted after his lime-burning labor, he'd come to me dizzy, wanting drink. Sometimes I blame that work, its fumes, for his frayed wits. But then his thoughts clear up again, and I forget. In truth, in early days, there was no better man than my John Clare. And when our little Anna came, ne'er better father be. He wrote these lines for her. Lord, help thee in thy coming years, if thy mad father's picture appears. He feared madness even then. After bath, he enters, takes me over. Alive at every inch of skin we are, almost as it were at first, when the body learns its other self and fits to it. I lie still afterward, keep everything he's left in me. We've loved in light or dark, in heat or crizzling ice for nearly 20 years. My body's cracked apart, bled for us, all our babes. I care not if our ways bring other mewling creatures to my arms. And when I've held our bairns, each one, I think of John before his birth and his mum with sister twin entangled. She lived 2 weeks, that one. He often craves to be that close to me, mayhap to any woman. Yes, I know there has been some. When liquor lust engorge him, I pray his untrue heart will not return. He feels so bad thereafter, and wouldn't wander without drink or lunacy rearing up. Sometimes he does not know me, calls me Mary, and believes he has 2 wives. But for my part, you ask, I would do it all again and never wish him gone. How could I? We are one. And 2 more poems. This one's called Running Late. Moon, a ball of yellow cotton, spins threads to the river road where I run. Thud of shoes on macadam, night beetle song. Car lights could strike me mute, stop my quick breaths singing. Like a deer, I could leap, disappear between the trees. So intimate is my time with the night. I'm any animal, unknowing. As the moon grows cool, pours its skimmed milk into me down to my toes. Thing that I am, at one with Route 17 tonight. And this is the last poem. Then Pete and John will take us out with a brief fun song, okay? If you've ever taken a Danish or Finnish sauna, you know that it sort of resets your body's thermostat so that you don't experience hot and cold quite the same way. This poem is set in December and it's called Long Night Moon. Coals glow in the sauna stove as we lounge in the icy, ashy light on benches high or low to the heat, making our bodies free of reddish codes. Now snow on the back and neck is exquisite as a lover's trailing touch. Juice passed in a jug soaks through our throats into conversation, whispering, "You bet," and more. Glazed with sweat, we slip outside, lie down on toweled banks of snow, and feel the shimmering streetlit flakes open on our bodies in a flutter, like lips, infinitely tender, approving. Thank you, thank you.
Patricia read a poem that described the lunacy spot. And this last very brief song I wrote 44 years ago. This also describes a lunacy spot, a bad end to a relationship. I got your letter the other day. I was hoping to hear that you were in pain. Why did you write me all about the flowers and the fields, the mountains and the springs, and how happy you are today, far away from me? hoping to hear that you'd been hit by a truck and that you'd fallen into terrible luck, and it was just impossible for you to fuck. Got your letter the other day. Thank you.
Wonderful poets, Ann, Ashira, and Patricia, and John and Pete. I want y'all to go out and tell your friends. I think we've set the bar pretty high for the Third Thursday Poetry Series. I hope none of the poets for next month.
I was wondering if the artwork that was just up,
Here's a microphone.